began on a bright September morning in 1994 in the small farming town of Ruwa, Zimbabwe, when more than 60 children from Ariel School stepped outside for morning recess and found themselves staring at something that would make world headlines and leave scientists and journalists baffled for decades. In the middle of the schoolyard, beyond the swing sets and the dusty edge of the playground, they saw what they later described as a silver disc, metallic and shining, gliding silently down from the sky before landing in a bushy field just outside the school fence. The children, between the ages of 6 and 12, froze. They watched as two small beings, thin and darkly clad with large almond-shaped eyes, emerged from the craft. Some of the younger students screamed and ran, but others stood transfixed, describing a kind of silent communication that came not through sound, but through thought. Many of them later said the beings spoke directly into their minds, warning that humanity was moving too fast, that our machines and pollution were destroying the earth, and that if we did not change course, something terrible would happen. And before we go any deeper into this mystery, make sure to like this video, share it with someone who still wonders what lies beyond our skis, subscribe for more true stories like this, and tell me in the comments where you are listening from tonight. Because stories like this connect us across oceans, across time, and maybe even across worlds. There were no adults around to witness it. The teachers were inside the main building attending a meeting, leaving the children unsupervised during break time. When the bell rang and they returned to class, several were crying, others shaking, and a few unable to speak at all. The teachers tried to calm them down, assuming it was an overactive imagination or a prank, but by the time the students went home, word had spread across Ruwa that something extraordinary had happened at Ariel School. Parents flooded the campus the next day, some angry, others frightened, demanding to know what their children had seen. That was when the local UFO researcher, Cynthia Hind, arrived. Hind interviewed the children one by one and asked each to draw what they saw. The results stunned her: 62 different drawings, most nearly identical, all showing the same saucer-shaped craft and two small beings with black suits and enormous eyes. She recorded her interviews, capturing the unfiltered voices of children trying to make sense of something impossible. Some of them trembled as they spoke. One young girl described the creature as small, with thin arms and long hair. Another boy said he felt a message pushed into his thoughts: "We must care for the earth, people are destroying it." Hind compiled her findings and reached out to experts abroad, and soon word reached Harvard psychiatrist Dr. John E. Mack, a Pulitzer Prize-winning professor known for his studies of people who claimed contact with non-human intelligences. Mack flew from the United States to Zimbabwe in November of that year to interview the students himself. He found them consistent, thoughtful, and sincere. They were not eager for attention, they were frightened, and many of them still could not sleep. Mack described their accounts as deeply compelling. He wrote that the children knew they had seen something beyond their understanding. Several of them broke down crying during interviews, saying they did not want to remember the eyes. Others drew the same oval-shaped heads and spoke of the same warning about humanity's future. The interviews were filmed, and decades later those recordings would become central to the documentary Ariel Phenomenon, which re-examined the event through the eyes of the now-adult witnesses. They had not forgotten a thing. Skeptics, of course, had their theories. Some said it was mass hysteria triggered by media coverage of a fireball seen over southern Africa 2 days earlier, which had been caused by the re-entry of a Soviet space rocket. Others argued that children had mistaken local workers or puppets from an educational outreach program for aliens, but those explanations never matched the details. The children's descriptions were too consistent, too specific. They described metallic reflections, movements that defied ordinary aircraft, and beings that did not walk but glided. Even the location, an open field with tall grass and scrub, showed no evidence of pranksters or human interference. Teachers who had not seen the event later said the children's fear was genuine and uncontrollable. One recalled, "They were not making it up, they were terrified." What makes the Ariel School incident so remarkable is not just the number of witnesses but their diversity. The students came from different races, cultures, and religions, yet their testimonies aligned almost perfectly. At a time when Zimbabwe was still emerging from years of colonial division, this shared experience united children who had little in common except what they saw that morning. For researchers, it became a psychological puzzle unlike any other. Mack's evaluation concluded there was no evidence of delusion, contagion, or fabrication. He suggested that something profoundly real, whether physical or psychological, had occurred. The children's sketches were later analyzed by experts, revealing strong patterns of geometric similarity that suggested genuine observation rather than imagination. Some showed the craft hovering just above the ground, surrounded by light. Others drew one figure standing on the disc, another near the trees. Years later, several of those children would be interviewed again as adults. They still remembered the metallic, soundless craft, the beings, and the overwhelming feeling of urgency and warning about the environment. One of them, now a mother, said she still felt the same presence when thinking about that day, as if those beings were watching from afar. Another described having dreams for years about the same eyes staring back at her. None of them gained fame or fortune. They simply carried the memory. The case drew international attention in the decades that followed. It was covered by the BBC, The Guardian, and later featured in Netflix's series Encounters, where filmmakers tracked down the original witnesses. The consistency of their recollections after nearly 30 years astonished viewers. Even seasoned skeptics admitted that whatever happened at Ariel School, it left a psychological imprint unlike anything seen in other UFO cases. For believers, it became proof that contact was not confined to Western military incidents like Roswell or Rendlesham. It could happen anywhere, to anyone, even children in a rural African schoolyard. For skeptics, it became a study in how collective belief and fear can shape perception. But for those who were there, it was neither a myth nor hysteria. It was an encounter. One child had said that when she looked into the creature's eyes, she felt sadness, as if it were mourning what humans were doing to the planet. That theme, an environmental warning, has become central to the Ariel case, and even today researchers note how eerily relevant it feels in an age of climate crisis. The event also challenged cultural bias in UFO research. For decades, most investigations centered on sightings in the United States or Europe, but the Ariel incident proved that profound experiences could occur anywhere on Earth and that children, without political or religious agendas, could be the most honest witnesses of all. The Zimbabwe case remains one of the few mass witness events where every child interviewed separately gave overlapping details, not just about what they saw, but how it felt. Their drawings, archived by Hind and later preserved by documentarians, remain haunting evidence. In one image, a silver saucer hovers above scrubland. In another, a tiny black figure stands beside it, hand raised. None of them resemble movie aliens. They were the raw impressions of frightened children trying to capture something incomprehensible. To this day, no physical evidence has ever been recovered from the site, yet the case refuses to fade away. Every few years, journalists revisit it, and every time, the witnesses repeat the same story. They have no reason to lie. What stands out most is the message itself, a warning about the future of Earth delivered to children in the middle of Africa, long before global climate change dominated headlines. Perhaps that is why the story still resonates. It is not about flying saucers or government cover-ups. It is about what happens when innocence collides with something greater, something that forces humanity to look inward. And if you are hearing this right now, maybe you were meant to. Like this video, share it with someone who still believes the universe hides its truths in plain sight. Subscribe so you never miss these true story explorations, and tell me in the comments where you are listening from tonight. I always read them, from Manila to New York to Nairobi, because stories like this remind us that mystery is not just above us, it is within us. Decades later, the children of Ariel School are adults scattered across the world, but their eyes still reflect the same fear, the same wonder, and the same question. What did we really see that morning, and why us? Whether it was visitors from beyond or something that transcended explanation, one thing is certain: the Ariel phenomenon changed those children forever, and through their voices, it continues to challenge the way we understand reality. So before you scroll away, take a moment to think about that morning in 1994, a silver craft in the African sky, and the message whispered into young minds about a planet on the edge of forgetting itself. Maybe, just maybe, they were trying to tell all of us something. Subscribe for more true stories like this, share this with someone who still wonders, and remember, you are part of the mystery now.